Mr. Arend, could you state for the recording what war and branch of service you served in?
I served in the American Army starting 3 months before war began. I stayed in artillery, anti-aircraft artillery. Finally, went to all the schools ahead, including the Command General Staff College. I commanded as a lieutenant commanding a battery, then a battalion, and finally a battalion all the way across Europe, from landing on the beach in Normandy until I operated Dachau, the prison, Dachau and Berchtesgaden, and a county in Germany.
And what was your rank?
I was a full colonel.
Were you drafted into the service, or did you enlist?
No, I was in the Army Reserve. I had taken the military training at UC for 5 years, and I stayed in the reserve after that. By the time the war came, I was a first lieutenant. So when they called me, and I stayed as a first lieutenant until I got an opportunity to be promoted by a colonel up in New England, when I laid out the defenses of the city of Hartford and the aircraft motor plant up there, which was so important to the American defense. I stayed a major, I stayed a captain until I got promoted to a major for having experimented with American 90mm guns and proved that I could outshoot the normal howitzers we had, and increased our range for all American guns by about 30%.
May I ask, why did you pick the branch of service that you picked?
The branch of service picked me, except for the Army. Our Army was where my training was at school. In the Army.
So you were in school when the war broke out?
No, I was out of school. I've been an architect for. I got out of school in 29. I got out of school in 34. And it was in 40 that the war began, so I've been an architect up until that point.
Okay, and where did you go for your training?
We went to most of the time we went to Chicago during the prior to the war, and then we went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Fort Sill, Oklahoma, but most of it was done at El Paso, Texas, at Fort Monroe, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I'm going to get it backwards, but in Texas, and then I was also permitted to go to the Command General Staff College, so that gave me a good start.
What was your rank when you were sent overseas?
I was a major on the way over. I should have been promoted, but when I got over there, I got asked, well, how come you're still a major? I said, I'm talking for somebody to promote me. So the general says, I'll take care of that right now. So he did.
And so you oversaw, was it a division of men or unit? You were in charge of a unit?
Yes, my men consisted of 700 men in a battalion, the 131st AAA Gun Battalion, an anti-aircraft battalion, and it was through this battalion that we went all the way across Europe.
And where did you land?
We landed at Omaha Beach. Fortunately, no losses at the landing.
Okay, was that an invasion? Omaha?
That's in France. Into France, yes.
And you had no losses in your.
Yes, in Europe I lost four men. They were lost when a B-24 bomber was shot down by the German, and they crossed the Rhine. It landed in an ammunition dump. We crawled into the plane and got 6 and 7 or 8 men out of there, 3 of which have survived, but some of the men actually died from the result of the ammunition dump blew up while we got out of there completely, and 77 tons went off, and it rolled us down the field, but some survived. I was one of the fortunate ones that survived. No hearing aids, but no hearing, but I can hear.
When you landed at Omaha Beach, what were your first impressions? Do you remember that?
No concerned. It was well organized. We put batteries in various 4 batteries in various positions right away to defend against anti-aircraft. We were an anti-aircraft battalion, and from then we moved to Belgium, Dinant, Belgium, where my job was to defend one of the two bridges across the river that the First Army had. After a month there, I went to Luxemburg City. I remember a little short time there. General McCroskey, who was then commander of the Fourth Army, who had moved into the front on the American front over there, and he had been my commanding officer back at Fort Bliss. And he said, "Hey, I want you up here." So we moved from Luxemburg to Maastricht, Holland, and actually prepared the defenses for the whole regiment, whole army, for the German attack. Should during the Battle of the Bulge, if they had attacked there, I would have been rear guard. Not the best job in the world, but I would have been rear guard. Instead of having 4 batteries then, by that time I had 7.
Did you have enough supplies?
Oh, we never ran short of supplies, never. But the biggest important thing was ammunition. Remember, we had ample supply of ammunition, but food was adequate, and we did well. We can't complain. The army fed us well.
As a major, were you involved in actually planning the attacks and that kind of thing?
Well,
were there
whenever the attacks. Remember, I'm part of a major operation. Well, my job is to defend a certain particular area. So we scattered our guns out on a square 2 miles on a side, and four guns at each of those locations. We connected all by a telephone, but we were able to anticipate the incoming plane coming to attack the thing I'm defending, so we could shoot at them long before they got to the real bomb release line.
After Belgium, where did you go?
I went eventually to Maastricht, Holland, having spent one week in Luxemburg City.
And then what?
From Maastricht, Holland, I went to the Weser River, which is a river, the last stream we crossed. My job was primarily to protect bridges across rivers. Weser River, which is the last river we crossed, and then I fell back upon military government role, and I ran a county in Germany called Weidenbruck. And while there, that's where by this time the war is over, and the poor people of the eastern part of the world, eastern part of Europe, were now trying desperately to get home. It would tear your eyes out to see the people 6 and 8 abreast of the road as far as you could see, solid people trying hard to get home. No food, no sanitation, no nothing. So the army saw this and decided that they had to be stopped. So they gave me orders to stop the people, stop them in place, and we would feed them and take care of them. Fortunately, the area I had a German army barracks where we would take care of 6,000 people. So I put 6,000 people in this, and we slowly let them go after feeding and taking care of their primary needs.
Were you involved in the fighting at the Battle of the Bulge?
Firing at night, yeah. But see, our job is we don't move our guns, particularly. They're heavy. They're dug in. They're dug in 6 feet, and so we don't move. We fired at everything. Every German plane that came close, we fired at it.
Okay, and that was the 90 millimeter.
Yeah, it's a 90 millimeter. It's a 9 millimeter. By the way, the interesting thing about the 90 millimeter, it's 2 millimeters bigger than the German 88. And people said, "Why in the world? We could fire if we capture a German 88 ammunition, we could fire it. The German couldn't fire our 90."
Was there that big a difference in the two?
That's a hair's breadth, but their would fit in our gun barrels. Ours would not fit in their gun barrels.
I know that you were involved in the liberation of Dachau.
Yes.
Can you tell me about your experiences there?
Well, when I was, first of all, at the end of the war was over, my first location was, I talked my way into running the Berchtesgaden, city and town of Berchtesgaden, and I ran it for 3 weeks, and then the town, Hitler's house, the Eagle's Roost, and everything about it. A very, very picturesque place. In fact, I brought home a telescope with a 6-foot long lens on it that they had used to search search the hills to keep anybody from coming in to get Hitler. After that, we were able to. I got a call from a general, and he wanted to know for 3 weeks at Dachau. He wanted to know if I wanted to volunteer to go to Japan. And I said, can't think of what. I said, what do I do in Japan? Besides, I said, if I go there, I'll never get out. I'm an architect. If I don't get back in civilian life and get my office open, I was 34 at the time, I'm going to be too old. So I said, sir, if you don't mind, I'll pass on that in order to go back to the United States and open up my office. He said, in that case, you'll have to trade battalions with another lieutenant colonel. He's a West Pointer. He can't go home because he has to run his 30 years, but you can go home. So he'll take over your battalion at Berchtesgaden, and you take over his battalion at Dachau, the prison camp. And with that, I got 5,000 SS troops, traditional prisoners to put within it. I had also cloaked the men's skins for their tattoos. She was in my solitary confinement as a prisoner. She's the one who was so horrible that when a man came into Dachau, had elaborate tattoos. She would have his skin. She'd have him killed and have his skin, and make chair backs and lampshades out of his skin. She eventually went to the war trials. Unfortunately, they only gave her 12 years. She got off with 10 years for good behavior, but fortunately for you and for me, she committed suicide in prison later on.
One of the other veterans that I interviewed that was part of the liberation process described how the prisoners of war and the Jewish people who were there really abused the Germans who were left when they were freed. Did you witness any of that?
No, I was not conscious of that. I didn't. I said that. In fact, I didn't go back into the cities and associate with people who were house-to-house basis. I'm sure that they would retaliate if they could, because of the treatment of them. The treatment of them is beyond the prisoners during the wartime was beyond description.
Were there any people left in the camp when you got there, or had they already been removed?
Oh no, the camps were full. In fact, it's those people that were trying desperately, those from the eastern part of Europe were trying desperately to get home. And they were the ones that filled the roads from shoulder to shoulder as far as the eye could see. As I said before, walking, no food, no sanitation, no place to sleep, hoping to get home and to show their family that they were still alive, and desperately trying to find out whether the family that was left at home was still alive.
Did it leave a lasting impression on you, seeing these people?
Oh, for sure. In fact, I'll never forget. I have colored photos. I have colored slides of this thing, and it's an ingrained in your memory. There's nothing in the world that will ever change it.
Were you under a lot of pressure, especially as an officer at that time? Did you feel a lot of stress and pressure?
No, I never felt stressed particularly bad. I knew my job. I did it carefully. I had been well trained. I'd had all the training. I'd been to the artillery school. I'd been to the Command General Staff College. I probably had as good an education in military tactics as you can think of, particularly when I was selected by the colonel to lay out the defenses of the airfield. And then when the time came to then you command it. And then the next thing you know, we moved to Hartford, Connecticut, and he said, do you lay out the defenses of the city of Hartford for a whole regiment, which is 2,000 men, 3 battalions, searchlights, anti-aircraft guns, and 40-millimeter guns. So when I put guns up on top of office buildings downtown in order to get good defenses of the city, because 1/3 of the American our aircraft motors were being made at Pratt Whitney's plant at that particular town, so it was important. And from there, I was sent to the Command General Staff College, where out of 1,100 students, there were only 12 captains, and I was one of those 12. I got good grades there and came home, but then I got a promotion from captain to major, and each step fell in place fairly well.
So would you say that by the time you did get into Europe, you were pretty well prepared for it?
Yes, that's right. Oh, yeah, yeah. No problem. No, never bit my fingernails.
Did you make any really close friendships during your time in the service?
Oh my, yes, I have friends that first of all, my battalion, my driver, particularly as executive officer, supplied the S3. Those are, but dozens of men in the battalion. Remember, there's 700 men in a battalion, and you work with them so closely that you get to know everything about them, and they're like your brother.
When you experienced losses, and I'm sure you did, among your men, did you feel somehow responsible because you were in command?
Yes, I was when the ammunition dumpings, but I had crawled in there myself, you see, in the ammunition dump, and helped get seven men and bodies out of there. And we got 4 of them loaded up into vehicles and away. And the last 4, I was supposed to, I couldn't get them out because the truck got stuck in the mud. Somebody came back there and the truck was stuck. The vehicle came back and we jerked it out. They said, hop on. And I said, well, my Jeep will pick me up. But the Jeep came back, but it was a little slower. And the ammunition, 77 tons of TNT, and went off from the shell that had fallen, from the plane that had fallen. A B-24 bomber fell there. I had the fortune of knowing that 2 of the men who still survived, and I get letters and details from those. And one of them lives out in the West, and he's an artist. He sent me 2 real nice pictures that he drew, trying to compensate for the fact that his life was saved.
I know that you received the Purple Heart. Can you tell us about?
Well, the Purple Heart came when I got when I was trying to get away from the ammunition dumping, but running hard. The 77 tons went off. It rolled me down the field another 300 or 400 or 500 feet, head over heels. I tore out my eardrums. My eardrums were torn up badly, and that's a casualty caused by enemy action. So the Purple Heart is a result of that. I should have. Unfortunately, I had to write the medal for the thing, and I was only a lieutenant colonel. The one I should have got was a Congressional Medal of Honor, but someday maybe, but not now.
Were you sent to a hospital when this happened?
I was supposed to. The doctor said you have to go to a hospital. But I knew that if you sent somebody to the hospital and you had a fever for a little bit, they wouldn't let you out. I also knew that if I left my battalion for more than 5 days, they would put somebody else in command. So I said, Doc, what can they do at the hospital? They can't wire them together. Eardrums, they can't sew them together. What can they do? He said, they can keep them clean. I said, Doc, you can do that. So he kept them clean, and I stayed in the battalion, and therefore they heal. They're passable. With hearing aids, I get along pretty well.
Can you tell me 1 or 2 of the most memorable experiences that you had?
Well, the most memorable was the rescue of the people from the B-24 bomber, American B-24 bomber. That probably has to be the most memorable one. That was in wartime. Being able to help the displaced people, that you can't believe how serious it is to see these people desperately trying to get home. When you can help them, feed them, put them on a road, give them some hope, that comes awful close to being one of the best things in my life. The third and best was getting home.
You mentioned rescuing people from a B-24, did you say?
B-24 bomber. B-24 bomber, yeah. Sorry.
What happened?
Well, the American troops were being sent across the Rhine River, jumped the Rhine River. We had three divisions on our side, 2 American, 1 British. They were to cross the Rhine on a given order. In order to prepare the way, 260 B-26s came over pulling gliders, and they were to be dropped. They were to be dropped on the far side of the Rhine to battle the German defenses over there. Some said, but they had to cut loose their cable and land, and which they did. But following them in close order were to be this 170 B-24 bombers. When they got there, they saw that the land down the ground was not occupied yet by the American line. American, British both had not gotten to this position yet. So the American bombers took a great big circle, great big far-out circle, and came back and were going to come around again. This time when they came around, the Americans were not there, but the Germans were there. And they shot down 74 of our B-24 bombers, one of which crippled badly, got back on our side of the Rhine River, and couldn't get any further, and cracked up in a supply depot. The supply depot happened to be an ammunition dump, and there were tons and tons and tons of TNT there. That's our biggest. After being on fire, the plane was on fire and smoldering, and a minor explosion occurring, and a shower of I got a photograph of a shower of blocks of TNT being shot up in the air, dropping everywhere. We waited till that calmed down. We ran on in anyhow, and it happened again. And the third time it happened, it exploded, and that's when we were trying to leave, and it didn't quite get far enough. I always said that there are some people on earth they don't want upstairs.
They don't want upstairs. You showed me a picture of something that I was not able to scan, but it's the first time I had seen that, so I'd kind of like you to explain again for the camera and the interview.
Okay, I'll try my best to.
There was a picture of a plane dragging through the skies 4 or 5 gliders.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Can you
okay.
tell me about that?
The first troops to land on the far side of the Rhine were being pulled over there by a passenger type plane, but they had gliders tied on with cables, and they had two planes being pulled by each plane. The cables were some 60-70 feet long, and they were staggered so that if they came together, the planes wouldn't bump each other, and they were to fly over the Rhine. When they got to the right position, given a given position, they'd cut the cable loose, and their glider would glide down and land, hopefully, on a nice soft place, not against a tree stump or in a creek bed. But so there were 260, to my knowledge, 260 of these DC-3s coming over, pulling the gliders, and about 170 later are the bombers.
What was the advantage of using gliders for this?
Oh, instead of a man having to swim across the river or come across in a boat where he's open to fire, he comes from the sky in a great quantity and overwhelms the German defenses. So that really happened eventually, but the first round got hurt badly. Our Americans got, British both got hurt. I never heard much about the British side. I know our side got. I can see that for myself.
Were the men in the gliders, were they part of the Air Force, or were they?
Oh, they're American soldiers. They're soldiers with
the Army.
The Army with equipment, rifles, and all their machine guns, everything. They got machine guns, everything fighting on the ground.
That's the first time I've heard that.
Okay. Okay.
What did you think of your fellow officers?
In general, the American officers were superb, wonderful, wonderful. Every once in a while, you'd find a guy that was didn't quite measure up, but the Army was pretty critical And it wasn't, no, the good officers were in long supply, really, and the poor ones faded away. What happened, I never paid attention. But my knowledge, I ran into very few who I thought were poor. If you did, you didn't pay much attention to them. I had a couple around that I had seen, but you avoided them all you could.
And what about the soldiers that you commanded?
Americans are superb. Americans rate. I can't tell you how you could ask for any better. They did a good job. They worked hard. For example, in Holland, we were there in the winter time. The war was supposed to be over in the fall, but it wasn't. The winter time came, and it was the coldest winter in 24 years. We weren't issued overcoats. We're not issued a third blanket. We're not issued galoshes. And we sleep in the field, and it snowed. So my job was to take care of it. So having a lot of experience in construction, I borrowed bulldozers, dug trenches 30 and 40 feet long for each of my 16 guns. We built underground bunkers for the men, bunkhouses for them, using the boxes from the ammunition and cutting trees. We borrowed old beat-up stoves from bombed-out houses, and we had our own electricity. And my men were required to be on that gun, sitting in position, ready to fire in 8.5 seconds from the time there was a. By the way, one of the most important men in a gun battery is a very clever individual who can identify a German plane in the air when it's only a speck in the sky. He can tell one from another. And my men were, in fact, of all the 5 battalions that I met over there, we had a big contest of whose men were the most capable of identifying planes, and my battalion were won first and second and third prize.
It's a wonder you didn't experience frostbite if it was that cold or
well,
serious.
For example, the men they were going to sleep in the field, and he's got 2 blankets. And so I got to do something. So I took him out on the field, and I said, I found a grassy place. I got a half a dozen fellows. I want you to see what we do. I want you to dig a pit here, 1.5 feet deep, the size of a blanket. And I said, now you do that, and you go out for some farm and you find straw or hay, and you put a foot or a foot and a half of that in that hole. Now you got two of you have 4 blankets between you. You've got 1 you're sleeping on. Now you got 3 to sleep cover with. And I got army reunions from time to time. I've asked my men, were you really bad cold? He said, oh, the truth of the matter, we got along pretty well.
Did you become used to the days and the sameness? Was it different all the time, or was there a sameness to the days?
The Army was different every day. There are rarely 2 days alike. Well, while we were in Hartford, Connecticut, in defense of the Pratt Whitney plant, I had a different job every day. The Army sent me out there, and I laid out the town. I'm an architect, maybe I was only a captain at the time, or a lieutenant. I laid out the town. I put big guns on top of office buildings. We scattered out our guns, and we had searchlights in those days, but then the radar wasn't functioning well enough. But we put all that in there. Now, one day we got a statement from the Army that we're going to get 224 houses because the men were sleeping on the ground. So sure enough, the colonel called me in and said, if you're an architect, you're going to charge building those 224 houses. They were knocked down, flattened out. So we scattered them out, we figured out how we're going to put where and build it. And everything was fine. Everything was fine. It looked great. But I got a captain came from engineers, and I want to inspect your housing. And so I took him around, and when I didn't see him, the lieutenant took him around part of the way, and he came back at headquarters and said, you're short a building. I said, no. So we went through the whole procedure, and no. He said, you're still short a building. He said, "What'd you do with it?" I said, "I got so angry after about an hour and a half." I said, "We probably burned it." So the colonel called me in about 5 days later, and the general called me up and said, "We burned up a building." I said, "No, well, I told that to that captain and somebody." I said, "We didn't. We got them all, Colonel." He said, "Well, a general will call you up next month, Sunday at 10 o'clock to explain. You explain to him where the 240 buildings are." So would you believe it? Next Sunday morning, I explained pit by pit, where the 240 buildings were, and the final general said, "Sir, Lieutenant, that's a good explanation. You got them all, no worry." But these are the kind of things that go on. You put them in place. You prepare for bad weather. You prepare for good weather. You prepare for every consideration, and if then you change it to fit it, make it work.
How often did you get mail from home?
Well, very fortunate. I had a very faithful wife. And in Cincinnati, in the United States, I got a letter almost every day, and I tried to write one. And by the way, there's a stack of mail in my attic about 6 inches high right now.
What can you tell me when the service ended?
Yes.
And you were sent home?
Well, I came home, but now I'm still in Army Reserve. So Cincinnati has an organization, an Army Reserve, which I joined, and I stayed in that reserve. And it was over in Fort Thomas, which was an old Civil War fort. And every summer we went to camp, and most of the time it was at our field artillery range at Oakland, Oklahoma. So I would go down there, and I was an instructor, and eventually I commanded all the reserve training in the Cincinnati and southern Ohio area. And every summer I would go to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and shoot up 2,000 rounds of 5,000 rounds of ammunition of your money, $2 million a week, and then for the strangest thing at the end on Friday the second week, it's always a 2-week period, I had to pay everybody. So I had turned in the amount of money, each man, each lieutenant, and so on. I had turned both the officers in this case, and the finance office would figure out how much was owed. And on Friday, if you paid on Saturday, on Friday I would go to the finance office with several officers, and we would count the money. Again, I had to count it. And if it was all there, fine. I said, "It's all here." And I said, "Now please put it back in the safe." "Well, we can't very well do that because you've handled it, and we don't know if it's all there or not." So I said, "Well, what am I going to do?" And "We don't know. We'll give you a receipt, one sack money." I said, "That doesn't help me very much." So would you believe it? For 5 years in a row, when I was in command down there, I took $242,000 back to my quarters with 145 pistol.
Can you tell me, what do you think was your biggest achievement during your time in the service?
Well, fortunately, it has to have to do with the part in Europe. The fact that I took 700 men to Europe and got them all home, but 3 died, killed in the ammunition dump explosion. It's hard for you to tell you that, see, anti-aircraft is a defensive kind of thing. Counting the number of planes you shot down, we shot down many. The truth of the matter is, if we kept them from coming in the first place because they didn't want to, we accomplished our mission. We accomplished our mission, and we had very few. I won't look at. In fact, General Simpson, to whom I owe a lot of things, made a special request for my battalion to come and defend his headquarters before the Battle of the Bulge, and I appreciated it. But at any rate, I would say that being part of the American defense, part of the American attack and defense in Europe is something I have to be most proud of.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or the military in general?
Yes, I'm sure. First of all, I know that we accomplished some of having taken photographs of the piled-up bodies in Dachau, which I have, and realized how horrible was with the Nazi hierarchy and government, and that to permit that type of person, that type of civilization to exist is absolutely criminal. So today, that's the same thing today. We have the criminal element in the world. We cannot permit them to win. They criticize what we did in Iraq. I don't know how else you can. Who else would have the answer? Saddam Hussein killed his own people, 2,000 and 3,000 at a time. Hitler killed his people, and the people of Europe, 2,000 and 3,000 at that time. I don't happen to be Jewish, but he killed the Jewish people just because of their birth, the color of their hair, the name, the pronunciation of their name.
Can you tell me what you feel is the single most important thing you learned from the military?
To love my wife. We married 64 years and had one argument, and she won.
So it helped you get along with people, I guess. I'm curious, when your service time was over,
yes,
and you sound as if you feel very good about the military,
yeah.
You had a pretty high rank. Why didn't you pursue that as a career?
Well, the other high-ranking thing I had was an architect, and then so I went to school for 5 years to become that. I had 4 or 5 years experience before the army got me. I was very fortunate in building. I built 25 churches in my lifetime. I designed about 6,000 apartments, the individual apartments in Men's building. I figured how I could borrow the money from the government, 104% of the cost of construction, including the land, a 50-year mortgage at 1% interest, and the towns and then in southern Indiana and in Kentucky and Ohio, there's 50 or 60 apartment buildings I built for which the people are enjoying themselves. I built large factories. I built a factory for margarine at $3.5 million in Minnesota. I designed half of the greeting card company plant here in Cincinnati, a steel plant, a salt plant, nice homes from 4,000 the cheapest to about 3/4 of them to $500,000 the best. I enjoyed that. That's fun. You see something positive that you did, and I wouldn't trade that for anything I can think of.
Is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't covered in the interview?
I think that you've done your request for questions has been very nice, very clear and very clean. It made it easy for me to tell the details of the stories that I otherwise would have overlooked or forgotten. This was the kind of thing that once in a while ought to be done to spread this information out through the people of the United States, who ought to know that the Army was not just all fight and all trouble, but actually got the job done, and we ought to be proud of every soldier who fought there.
I want to thank you very much for coming.